Hi, Shelb. Thank you for doing this. Um, so there isn't much paint needed. A nice size white, um, you know, a little blue, red, and black. I'll give you a few other colors in case anyone wants to do anything else with them. In this painting, it's very simple. Just remind people that they got it. And, every tree is different, every snowflake, every bird is different. I would suggest like not to, really help someone with their painting unless they're like really struggling. And if you could wear a mask when you are with the people, but of course you don't necessarily need to wear one when you're teaching from the easel. I just think that's how I would like, creative to be, I think it's the way to go. Okay. Anyway, so I did start this already, but I'm going to kind of rewind that for a moment because I kind of think this will be a better idea. So what I'm going to do is with my small flat here, I'm going to just get a little bit of white with a little bit of blue and put it and mix it on the side of my paper, not paper, flat, of my plate. And I'm going to actually draw the edge of my tree first. And I'm going to allow myself to go into it a little bit, but it's going to save me from painting my whole area blue and waiting for that to dry. I always say that if you think about a tree, the widest part is going to be the base. And as it goes up, it gradually gets thinner. It doesn't have to be like a giant, quick slope. It's very gradual. So I don't know, let's just say that, our hand kind of just as is on the corner. Maybe we'll say like that's how far to go, as a suggestion. Everything's like a suggestion. Nothing has to be, because I always say that art has rules and everything's meant to be broken. Okay, so that's going to be like the widest. And as it goes up, you can always tell the people to kind of like, slowly using their ice skate, their edge of their, just stop and just kind of see how they're going. I want to try to get a little bit thinner as I go, a nice gradual. So by stopping, I can be like, all right, I want to get a little bit thinner, thinner, thinner. Just something like that. It doesn't have to be, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can. I mean, it totally could be straight up. So like, just say this is it's not the whole tree, it's partial tree. There's more beyond the canvas. That's something I say. It could be the whole tree if they wanted. I just did it like this. So it could be straight up, it could go gradual thinner, it could be a whole tree being able to see both sides of it, whatever they'd like. I'm gonna leave that there. And now I'm gonna pick up my big brush. I'm gonna tap on into my white paint and then start going back and forth. Now, if I go into, you wanna encourage them to like, to kind of meet their line. We don't want to see like too much of a stop. It can overlap into the tree a little bit, right? But it's saving me from really letting that whole space get too wet and have to wait to dry. Okay. It can be a back and forth brush stroke. It can be like a flip-floppy brush stroke. And as I'm going down, almost about halfway down my canvas, again, letting it just brush into the edge of my tree line. And as I go down about halfway, I'm going to add white with a tiny, tiny corner of the blue. And I'm going to start letting that blend into the wet white paint on that bottom edge of it, right? That slight transition. Again, white, corner of blue, a little bit more. I'm just starting to add a little bit more, but always letting it blend into the top or what's above it. And I'm just gonna start, I have plenty of white on there, so I'm dipping into my blue, starting below with flopping or brushing. And again, look at, I'm going into my tree just a little bit. Adding more blue. If I'm getting like super bright blue. I'm just gonna blend up here a little bit more. Super bright blue, and I want a little bit more white in there. Feel free. And if you want to, blend a little bit of blue up into this area, just barely touch it with just a little, not much paint on there. As I go down. So if you wanted to put like the tiniest dot of blue on their brush with the white at the beginning, like say like one bristle, always can build it up any, to darker. So they do have a little bit of color up there if you want, or you can start white, add a little bit more white here. They're not necessarily going to be as good as us as into like working that back up into what they've already done. Usually when they do that, it's almost like putting a big ugly band-aid on it. I just didn't get enough paint on this part right here, so just getting that on. All right, I promise this won't be long. Again, if they want to, or I don't think I said this yet, but if they want to paint the sides of their canvas, tell them to wrap whatever they have on the very edge onto the sides to have a nice finished edge when they hang this bad boy up, right? All right, that looks fine to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, it's the round tip flat, and I'm going to use white paint. You know what? I'm going to grab a little brown, but hey. So now I would wait just a few minutes, right, to let like any of the overlapping kind of blend, let people catch up. You have 2 hours, right? So, we don't want to drag it on, but, we don't want to rush people. So just kind of keep that in mind that you have 2 hours. So I'm just starting to clean up my edge, my tree edge. And this is a good time if they want to change their tree at all, the shape of it. This is a great time for that. Also, what I could do here is add just like another like tiny little bristle of black, like creating like the lightest gray in the whole wide world. Ooh, that was kind of dark, but hey. Sometimes our paint just kind of does what it wants to do, right? So barely any. We're trying to keep this pretty white, but by giving it just a little bit of gray, we'll just give it a little bit more interest and form. So I just added like the tiniest drop of black, and I'm just like, especially up here, it will give something to this part of the tree, so it will stand out from my white sky, especially if they have a really bright white sky. So the tiniest little bit, I'm just filling in my tree. Whoop. And they always can wipe their brush off if they have too much white or black. They can always rip a piece of their paper towel and use it just for wipe out some of that black if they ever do. Okay, so my tree is done, and I kind of went up and down. And one thing you can do is suggest like to kind of go and after you do the whole thing and just kind of do using the tips of my bristles, just kind of sweeping across in a slight smile or curve, right? Maybe starting from this edge and going across just to give it some roundness. So I painted it up and down because it was easier for me, but now I'm just using the edge of my brush, lining it up and just sliding it across in a slight smile. All right, and that already gave it some form. Okay, so when I make a branch, first of all, I'm going to think about my birds. I want to make sure I have enough room for them. I want the branch to be in the right spot for them to sit. So you can say like, use your hand as like a placeholder for your birds and kind of think about like where you'd like them to be sitting. And then think of your side of your tree as a highway, and the edge of your brush drives up and just right on off, turns off. And then I ask myself, is that the top or is that the bottom of my branch? And I'm going to say that that is the bottom. And so I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Thinking about, again, thickness. The thickest part of my branch is going to be touching my tree. So I'm going to come on down, exit. And now that I have these two parallel lines, I'm going to start to get closer and closer and closer and closer until it's just one. Okay, I'm going to fill that in. And I'll do some, of course, this is, definitely why we wanted to let that background dry. Painting on in, okay. And now I can go in and add some more branches off of this. So your tree sometimes tells you what it needs. So I'm gonna do something like that. And these are all, just to remind people that now everything is getting smaller. Each branch off, each twig off is going to be smaller. And I keep it more simple, better, right? So maybe adding one off. And again, it's always adding that, kind of creating that exit off. Maybe I'll go this way. Something like that. Maybe one more off right here. Trying again to keep it. And they can use their flat small or their detail brush for any of these things. Whatever feels comfortable, it's what we use. I'm going to add a little bit of black gray into this. I notice birch branches are darker than the main trunk. I think that's perfect for now. Again, thinking about how big my birds are going to be. So now I can think about the branch above, right? Because that's the one with the heart on it. So adding my paint to my brush, thinking about how high my birds are going to be. That's a big thing, planning it out, right? Driving up, exit off. Now, this is where having a little bit of the gray on my branch. Actually, this is probably like a really good idea to really add some gray, because now that I'm doing that branch up there, I'm noticing that I really will need it if that sky is white. So say, I notice that the branches on birches are gray. So you can do it, of course, it doesn't have to be like dark. Now, finish this guy. Maybe this one's a little shorter. Ask yourself top or bottom. And it's going to be the biggest as it leaves the tree and get thinner as it comes off. I'm going to add, if it's hot in there, the paint might get sticky. And I just scoop up a little bit of whatever color, put it to the side, and then add a tiny drop of water and give it a mix. You don't want drips, but it will just help. Okay. So I'm going to add a branch here. And off. And the branch. Just kind of letting it do what it wants. I think it's calling for one here. I don't know if I like it, but hey. Okay, well, see, that's fine. Okay, so say this happens, right? We have a really dark section right there. Just tell them to wipe off their brush or let it dry for a minute, right? And then you can always go back. And feel free to call me at any time. We can always Facebook call if you're stuck. Okay, that looks good. Fine. Letting my tree dry, I think, for a moment. We'll go to our birdies. I'm going to switch to my small flat for a moment. Let's see. My black was frozen, of course. Okay. Okay. So my birds are like touching or overlapping. Their bodies are ovals. Their tails are pointy triangles. Heads are circles or like an arch. And they're looking up at the heart. They could be looking at them. So say wherever you put your beak is going to really tell the viewer where the birds are looking. So they can think about that. Okay. Or where the viewer is looking. No, where the birds are looking. Okay. So I'm going to just, again, picture how big I want them, where I want them. Ooh, I'm going to draw. And I want them sitting on the branch. So I want to make sure if anyone's nervous, they always could start this in a super light blue. At 1, I want them touching. I'm going to kind of let it overlap. 1 can be slightly bigger. All right, 2. I'm going to do just a simple tail. Now, one other thing is to think about proportion, right? The size of the tail to body, the head to body. Okay. Now we could do circle, or you could do, I'm not going to go by circle, I'm just going to do like this. Again, they can do this in a light blue, so it's barely there, and then go over it if that feels best for them. And I'm going to think about where I want their beaks. If I want them looking at each other, the beaks will be pointing at each other. If I want them looking up, and again, proportion, how big is their little beak compared to their body? Maybe I would use a detail brush or this brush, whatever feels good. And then they can fill in. They're going to add a highlight to these birds, but that highlight comes in, whoop, that was silly of me. The highlight comes in later. My white was kind of still wet there, so it's kind of gray. So I'm gonna just let that be. So you would color that in, let it dry. My paint is frozen, so a chunk of icy paint just slid down. But I will add, I will fix that. Okay. All right, so I'm not gonna, hold on. Okay, we're gonna work on the tree and then the bow, and then I will finish up all like the tiny little extra details that I've already told you, but I just need to spend some time on, and I will fix that. Okay, so say maybe there's like, we'll say that there are 3 different styles of birch bark that you're going to show, or examples of the texture that you're going to show. You're going to start with, let me grab it. I have our long brushes, and these are great just because they're awful, and I can use the tips of them to get some cool markings. So with my brush as is, I'm going to tap it on into the black paint, wipe off the extra. I'm going to use the whole side of your brush, putting it on the edge, and well, here I am. And then I'm just using the tips like a rake. That's like a good way to go about it, saying it. Now this can happen from side all the way over, from the middle, just a few brush strokes from this side. Tom, the more variation and the less like exact in pattern and, you know, same spots everywhere, the more natural it will look. So tips of brush bristles, and then just drag. So a little bit of paint, wipe off, kind of like that. I'm gonna do a little bit here. So this is like one. And then there's just two more little things I can show you. And if they ever have like a big dark spot like this, one, it's totally fine. And two, I will show you what to do. Okay, let that be for now. If they do, just say let it dry for a moment. Okay, the next one are the tiny little slits. So that's when I use my detail brush, put the paint on. I like to roll it to get the extra paint off, tighten up the bristles. I even can do that a drop of water, but we don't want drips, so they can tap it off. Okay, this is the slits. I hold my brush a little further back, slight smile because we're keeping our tree round, and they're just little lines using the tips of your bristles, barely letting it bend. And again, short ones, long ones, groupings, single, staggered. I'm not going to do it in my branches. I don't notice it in my branches. And I think that looks wonderful. That's all that is. And then the third thing is either if they make a mistake, right? Or if they just want to do this technique, dip your big brush, this long one, into the white paint. There, you know, wipe it off, the extra, using the tips of the bristles like a rake. I'm going to go over, barely touching, and I'm just going to add some white on top. This kind of gives it some depth and breaks up any really dark parts. Okay, that's all. That's how you do the bark. Now, if they want to add their initials in the tree, I'm going to take my small flat, make a light gray. So scoop up some white, put it to the side, add a tiny dot of the black. You always add dark to the light. Then I'm going to think about where I want it and how much. And I'm going to fill this little heart in with the light gray. I'm going to take my detail brush. Probably will definitely need to add the water to my paint. And I'm just going to give it, it doesn't have to be perfect, just like a nice little outline. Giving it a little bit of an edge. And then I'm going to do my initials, or whatever plus whatever. I'm going to set write creative. Take it right there, whatever. Okay. Okay, and that's that. All right, one more step I'm going to do is the heart. So probably with my small flat again. Right, small flat. Nope, that's not small flat. Oh, here it is. All right, small flat, red paint. Think about where it's hanging. You could use your detail brush or whatever brush feels good. think about how far down it's hanging. Again, they could do this with a light blue and then let it dry. You're gonna fill it in and maybe do 2 coats. I do a highlight on this as well and an outline, but I would do the outline very, very last to, because I don't want it to blend in with the red. The string, thinking about the string as it's straight as it hangs, right? And then just think about how it would loop around the tree. And then I made it into a bow. So, and it's string, so it kind of be a little floppy. Oops, brush. Roll it so the bristles stay. Okay. And for the highlights, they're just going to be little lines, and you'll see that when I'm done, when you have it in your hands. They can do any kind of outlining they want on the tree if needed, or if they'd like. Oh, and snowflakes. Real quick before we end this. Combination of brushes if they'd like. I guess that flat one's okay. This one's kind of breaking, but I'll get you another one. All right, so different snowflakes, different sizes give interest and depth. So I like to start maybe with this little dashy one, maybe on an angle. Dash, 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 even in that white. Okay. I could do small little circles if I wanted. I can turn my brush around and add dots as well. So you'll see that there's multiple types. I also can let it kind of build up on some of the branches if I'd like, even on the top of the heart if I liked. Okay. I hope that is enough, and I hope it wasn't too long. Thank you so much. Remember, you don't need to help them if they don't really need it. Mask on when you go up to them. I know you're going to be awesome. Just be really confident. They know when we're not confident, and so sometimes you have to act, play the part. And I know you're going to do great. So thank you so much. Bye.